Imagine opening your eyes. The year is 1596, and as you look out your door, the sky is grey and dreary, a light rain casting a fog over the rolling hills. You live within walking distance of the sea, nestled in the village of Willoughby, on the central east coast of England. This place, steeped in history, was once called Verhenturm by the Romans, the great sacred grove. Perhaps it was a sign of what was to come. This is your birthplace, and it is where the legendary Jamestown colonist John Smith would emerge. Born into a family of respectable standing, you are sent to school at a young age. On the surface, you look like any other child your age, but even at 13, something within you sets you apart. There's an unspoken fire, a yearning for the sea. That longing drives you to sell your books, your satchel, and anything you can scrape together, all to chase that distant horizon. Even as a boy, you felt the call of something greater, a yearning to escape the familiar. You never fit the mold of the quiet life your family envisioned. There was always a calling, a whisper of the sea, and stories of distant lands that set your heart racing. It's a time of great change. Whispers fill the streets of your village. Tales of the Polish-Lithuanian Commonwealth, at the peak of its power, conquering vast lands in Europe. Spanish ships returning from the New World with gold beyond imagining. As a boy raised near the salty seashore, you can smell the adventure in the air. But your dreams are dashed, at least for now. The death of your father cuts your plans short, leaving you in the care of guardians more interested in your inheritance than your future. They assign you as an apprentice to Thomas Sendall, a famous merchant. While the work isn't terrible, it's not the life you dreamed of. You long for the open sea, not a life spent tallying goods in a counting house. The loss of your father felt like a door closing, but instead of accepting it, you saw it as a push to seek your own path. You knew there was no turning back. This was your chance to rewrite your destiny, even if it meant defying those who thought they knew what was best for you. Determined to escape, you plead with your guardians for freedom. They dismiss you with a mere 10 shillings, but that's all you need to make your way to France. You soon find yourself accompanying Master Peregrine Bertie, 4 years your junior, but already a nobleman's son, from a family your own had served for generations. Sailing from London, you arrive in Orleans, where you spend a month among kind strangers who offer you enough money to return home. But home no longer holds anything for you, so instead, you travel to Paris. This was your first real adventure, far from home, in a foreign land. Every new city, every new face was a step closer to becoming the man you wanted to be. You felt the thrill of independence, the excitement of charting your own course, and the sense that you were finally on the path that was meant for you.
In Paris, I met David Hume, a Scotsman whose friendship would shape my future. Together, we journeyed to Rouen, where Hume provided me with letters of recommendation for King James of Scotland, encouraging me to deliver them in person. Yet, the call of adventure was too strong, and instead, I headed to Havre de Grace, where I began my life as a soldier. The year was 1596, and France had just seen peace restored under its king. With little else to do, many soldiers turned to new forms of entertainment, and I found myself among them. Captain Joseph Duxbury led me into the Low Countries to fight alongside the Dutch against the Spanish. For 3 or 4 years, I immersed myself in the chaos of war, growing more determined with each battle. But eventually, the restlessness returned. Armed with the letters from Hume, I set sail for Scotland. Disaster struck when my ship wrecked, leaving me violently ill on Holy Isle. But fate intervened, and I recovered, making my way to deliver Hume's letters at last. Though some believed the letters to be a jest, the Hume family's noble rank ensured me a warm reception, though no favor came from the king himself. Returning to England at the age of 19, I was greeted with admiration from my fellow townspeople, intrigued by my tales of war and travel. Yet, the constant attention became too much. I retreated to the forest, building a solitary dwelling where I devoured books like Marcus Aurelius's Meditations and the Art of War, practicing military exercises and honing my skills in horsemanship and hunting. Victory brought honor, but it also brought weight. The duels tested more than my skills, they tested my resolve. Each opponent I bested was a reminder of what was at stake: my reputation, my future, and the lives of those who fought beside me. The thrill of battle was intoxicating, but it was also a constant reminder of how quickly glory could turn to ruin. Rumors of my strange behavior soon spread, and concerned friends sent a rider to encourage me back into society. This man, an Italian servant to the Earl of Lincoln, convinced me to leave my isolation and join him in learning advanced cavalry tactics. Refreshed and renewed, I set off once more, this time seeking my fortune against the Turks. Dressed in fine clothing and with a portion of my father's estate, I attracted the attention of unscrupulous Frenchmen who convinced me to join their venture, supposedly linked to a Hungarian duchess. However, the promise turned out to be a ruse. My belongings were stolen, leaving me stranded and penniless. I wandered from town to town, eventually falling sick and collapsing in a ditch. Once again, a stroke of luck brought me salvation, as a generous farmer nursed me back to health. There were moments when despair clawed at me. Alone in the wilderness, lost and wounded, I questioned everything. Was this insatiable hunger for adventure leading me toward greatness or destruction? Yet even then, I couldn't turn back. The thought of surrendering, of fading into obscurity, was a fate worse than death. Not long after, while roaming the woods, I spotted one of the men who had robbed me. Instinct took over. Swords were drawn, and in the heat of battle, I emerged victorious. Though the man claimed innocence, he named his accomplices and offered information that set the stage for my next journey. I sought out an old family friend in Earl of Poya. Taken in without hesitation, I received great insight as we traveled through France. Intrigued and inspired, I soon found myself aboard a ship bound for Italy, filled with Catholic pilgrims heading to Rome. As we sailed, the seas turned treacherous, and whispers began to spread among the crew and passengers. I was a Protestant, and they blamed me for the storm, convinced that my presence had cursed the voyage. The rumors grew until they reached a fever pitch. Fueled by fear and superstition, they seized me and threw me overboard. As I struggled against the waves, it became clear that this wasn't just about religion, it was about fear. To them, I wasn't simply a Protestant, I was a threat to their very survival. Their hatred, born from centuries of religious conflict, saw me as an abomination, and I was left to fight against the sea itself, a lone figure battling not just for survival, but for my right to exist. Miraculously, I swam to the shore of Seine, Mary's, an island inhabited only by goats and cattle. Weak and exhausted, I managed to signal for help, though it seemed hopeless. But by sheer fortune, a ship seeking refuge from the storm passed by the next day, and I was rescued. The commander, Captain Laroche, a companion of the Earl of Poyet, recognized me and brought me aboard, saving me from what could have been my final trial. I joined Laroche on his expedition into the Orient, and on our way back, as we sailed through the narrow passage leading into the Adriatic Sea, we hailed a richly laden Venetian ship. However, mistaking us for pirates, the Venetian crew opened fire. In the heat of the battle, I took my place alongside Laroche, and after a fierce fight, we emerged victorious. The spoils were great. Among them was a box containing 1,000 sequins, and for my role in the victory, a share of the wealth was granted to me. For the first time, I felt a sense of freedom. Freedom from the constraints of my past, from the grip of poverty that had once held me back. With gold in my pocket and a taste for adventure stronger than ever, I set off on a journey through Italy. I traveled from Piedmont through the beautiful cities of northern Italy, soaking in the art, the culture, and the people. But as much as I enjoyed the splendor, my heart still longed for the battlefield. After wandering through the countryside, I crossed into Austria. Here, I would run into my fellow countrymen. Flushed with success, the Emperor of Germany intensified the war effort, raising 3 large armies. I served under Archduke Matthias, commanded mainly by the Duke Mercury, with whom I shared a close rapport. We soon laid siege to Alba Regalis in Hungary, a heavily fortified town held by the Turks. My sling-launched bombs harassed the enemy, setting fires within their defenses. After fierce resistance, the town fell, dealing a severe blow to the Turks. During the siege, I introduced a tactic that caught the attention of my superiors, a telegraph system using torches to communicate across enemy lines. I had suggested to Baron Kissel that we set up 3 torches on a mountaintop to signal Lord Ebersbot within the besieged town. By lighting and extinguishing the torches in patterns, we could spell out messages, coordinating attacks across 7 miles of enemy territory. I remember feeling a surge of pride as the signals flashed through the night sky, knowing that my ingenuity was helping to turn the tide. It wasn't just about strength in battle. It was about outsmarting the enemy, using every tool and every trick to gain the upper hand. I knew then that survival depended not just on bravery, but on wit. Earl Meldridge, a native of Transylvania, was then called to the service of Prince Sigismund. The army thence followed, I included. It wasn't an easy trek, as 300 men froze in a single winter night. When we finally arrived, the city of Regal was in mountainous terrain and heavily fortified. A battle commenced with even losses on both sides. The Turks then laughed and brought 9,000 more infantry. As the Turks laid siege to our forces, they began taunting us openly, sending challenges to entertain the Turkish ladies watching from the battlements. One such challenge came from a Turkish lord, Turbishaw, who dared any Christian soldier to face him. I drew the lot, and as I rode out to meet him, I could feel the eyes of the women watching, eager for blood. In a fierce clash, I thrust my lance through his head, sending him tumbling to the ground. Cheers erupted from our side, while the Turkish women wailed in disbelief. Victory felt sweet, but the cheers and cries of the women were a harsh reminder of the brutal theater of war. My victories were not just personal, they were performances, each one playing out in front of a crowd that judged every move. The battlefield was my stage, and I played my role with every ounce of skill I had. After defeating Turbishaw and claiming his head, the battlefield quieted, but it was clear the Turks were not finished. The following day, a fierce comrade of Turbishaw's, Grualgo, challenged me to another duel, enraged by the loss of his ally. I accepted without hesitation. The women still lined the battlements, eager for blood, and the eyes of my comrades were fixed upon me. Our lances shattered on impact, and the fight quickly turned to pistols and swords. Grualgo fought with a ferocity I had rarely seen, but he was wounded early, and with swift skill, I drove my sword through him, claiming his head as well. The Turkish women, once again, wailed in disbelief as I presented the head to my comrades. The thrill of victory was undeniable, but the cheers felt hollow. Each duel brought me closer to the edge of death, and I began to wonder how many more times I could stare it down and survive. The Turks were devastated, as why would God let an infidel slaughter their greatest warriors right in front of them? They soon after succumbed to our might. However, I would once again learn that fate can be a fickle mistress as darker days were to come. Feeling confident with our recent victory, we were asked to help defeat another Turkish stronghold. This time moved into a narrow and mountainous pass near the town of Rottenton. Perhaps overconfident from our recent victories, we pressed forward, only to be caught in a deadly ambush. 40,000 Turks and Tartars descended upon us, overwhelming our forces. It was a slaughter. My comrades fell around me, and though I fought desperately, I was gravely wounded. Outnumbered and overpowered, I was left for dead on the battlefield, surrounded by the bodies of my fallen comrades. But fate, it seemed, had other plans for me. The Turks, finding me still alive, noticed the richness of my clothing and armor. Assuming I was a nobleman, they spared me, not out of mercy, but because they saw an opportunity for profit. I had been brought low by the very riches I once took pride in. The spoils of war had saved my life, but now I was no longer a soldier. I was a prisoner, at the mercy of my enemies.